Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Am I Doing This Wrong? I am one of your hosts, Ryann. Super excited to be back. How are you doing, Morgan?
I am doing well. I just realized we probably start every episode with all right. I think we both do that. So we'll have to think about switching that up. It's just like a natural intro.
It is.
We hit record and then it's the first thing. Yeah, we both do it. I just realized. So
we talked about, no, you're right. And we talked about that. I think, what was that? Maybe last week or something. We were like, do we need to start every episode like we're radio DJs, like, all right, everyone, hope you're having a good night,
welcome to the smooth sounds of, I don't even know, I couldn't think of a quick acronym. 101.2 the wave.
KGXR. Yeah.
I know I don't want to say a real one, so I'm like trying to think of...
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, we'll work on the intro, or maybe we won't. Maybe it'll just be one of those things that we'll keep workshopping, and that'll just be what we do.
Yeah, we could do a new one every time. You guys can let us know.
Yeah. We'll
preferences.
Take a poll.
Yes.
Right. We'll survey. We'll take a poll to see how our audience is feeling.
Yeah.
But I will take this time to just say I have been so thoroughly excited and relieved to hear how many people have really listened and been able to quote parts of the episode, or really just honestly be, honest, I guess. Honestly be honest. But seriously,
is there any other way?
There is no other way. It's honestly honest. The name
Simply
of my new brand.
Dusty. That's what that reminds me of. Just Friends reference.
Yes.
Simply Dusty. Is there any other kind?
Love that movie. But no, it's been nice. It's just been very refreshing. I honestly will tell you that I was excited when we just let out episodes in general. I was like, this is so fun. Will listen to it a few times, if we need views, they're coming from me. And so it's just been really, really refreshing to hear that other people enjoy the conversations as well. So yeah. I just want to say thank you. This has been such an interesting time. Also, just very introspective. This is very vulnerable. And even though it's easy to say these things because we're just kind of ridiculous people in that way, it still takes a lot to, actually have people tell you oh yeah, I heard all about your bush last week. And I'm like, right, because I talked about it for an hour.
Yeah. And then they're like, see you at Thanksgiving, and you're like, sure, can't wait. Yeah. Oh my gosh, no, that's really true. And thank you guys so much for the support. We could not be more grateful. We love doing this, but we're so happy to hear that other people are enjoying it as well. Right. So Ryan's totally right. This is such a cool experience, and we just appreciate it so much.
Yes, awesome. The only thing I am right about is we loving your support.
Yes.
But yeah, let's go on ahead and get into it. So, but actually, you know what? Before we jump into it, I do want to check in with you. As always, how are you doing tonight, Morgan?
I am doing pretty well.
Yeah?
Doing good. Yeah. Nothing crazy to report. I did make some, some pumpkin bread. I wasn't sure if I wanted to bring that up and sound like basic bitch, but I was like, you know what? It came out pretty good. I made first time making homemade whipped cream. So that was kind of fun. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Kind of hard. I ended up using my milk frother, the one I use for my coffees, because I was like,
that's a good
idea. My wrist is gonna get sore trying to whip this in the bowl with a whisk for 15 minutes. No. So
well,
kind of fun. What about you?
First of all, I do want to just mention that I love making homemade whipped cream.
Oh.
And I will say that one of my secrets, because I have secrets of baking, I have like two,
Okay.
but you can look this up. But it's using Greek yogurt in my whipped cream.
Ooh.
It gives it like just a little bit of tartness,
Mm-hmm.
and it just like kind of changes the texture just a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you ever make it again, put some Greek yogurt in
We
there.
do have some leftover bread, so I don't have any Greek yogurt, but I will try to remember when I go to the store.
Yes,
That sounds
please
good.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how I'm doing. As good as my whipped cream. No, actually, my whipped cream is spoiled this week. No. This week has just been honestly a shit show. Just a lot of things, and I'm trying to like we were talking about earlier. I'm in therapy, and it is helping. It's helping me recognize just how shitty my processes are sometimes, whether it be procrastination or getting upset for no reason, or the only things that I can control being like more reckless with them because I just don't want to do those things. And this is honestly just kind of like a side effect of being in positions that we don't always want to be in. And that really just goes to like my career. I feel like I'm at a crossroads, and I realize that I'm proud of myself in some parts because I'm proud that if I looked back 10 years and I knew that this was going to be my life, I'm so proud of myself. I've accomplished most of my educational goals, and I've done the things that I set out to do, and I'm in the places that I wanted to be, but it's just not looking like what I expected it to look like. And so that's unfortunate, and that's the expectations that I've been putting on my life for the past literally like 10 years. And so it's unfortunate. It's like a earth-shattering moment, or you know what I mean,
Yeah,
it's
you
just one
sound
of those
like
moments.
sound like you're heading towards your 30s. Honestly, I probably
Yes.
everyone I know who has turned 30 has had like this moment. And me
Right.
being a little bit older than you, I can tell you, I 100% know exactly where you're at.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you just get to a point where you evaluate everything, and there are things you're proud of and think, but looking to the future,
Right.
I think hindsight comes into play as well. You're like, well, I could have done this and that. Well, you didn't. So stop holding yourself to those expectations. Like,
Right.
and I think we forget, and not that you aren't proud of the things you've accomplished, like you said, but I think it's easy to focus on the things that you didn't. But it's also things you might not have known that you wanted when you were 23.
Exactly.
So how can you hold yourself accountable for something that wasn't a prospect? You know what I mean?
Right. No, that's a wonderful way to put it, because I wasn't this person then, right? So the goals that I set out for myself are in reality, they're just unrealistic to try and hold myself to now, which
Yeah.
is what I'm working through. But it's like an emotional process, things that I've always assumed that were good for me don't feel great right now. And it's relieving, but being relieved of something is also like, turning on the faucet, right? Of like all of the emotions that come with that. And so it's just a lot. And I feel like, yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that I am turning 30 next year. And that's something that I've never really been like necessarily like, oh no, like whatever, I'm gonna get older, like it is what it is. But when you put it that way, it's not just about the number, but it's just about where that point is in your life, right? Because
Yeah.
I've only been like a real adult for like 4 years now. Like, let's be
Yeah.
real. I was getting a lot of parking tickets and not paying them off. Like,
Right. Let's
like
put air
before
quotes
that.
around real adult, because I'm not sure if I'm there yet. I'm just saying I've also had this like crisis, of identity.
Well, I've paid taxes successfully like for a few years now. I'm a real adult. Like that's the criteria. If the
That's the
IRS,
criteria. Yeah.
if the
The
IRS isn't coming
IRS.
out of me,
Yeah,
coming
they
after
don't have
me.
your number. Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. No, that's true. That's true. Not everyone is on that same page. So look at
Exactly.
you. You're
Look at
killing
me. Look at me. Exactly. IRS, don't listen to this. But yeah, so that's where I kind of am this week. And yeah, and I'm just trying to own it and not, look the other way, because that would just make it that much harder. So it is relieving to be able to acknowledge those things. Like I mentioned, I'm in therapy now. And so it is really helping me like to not bury those emotions and,
Yeah.
you know, let them come out in other ways. It's still happening a little bit, but it's just giving me an outlet to like, that's okay. Like that's actually a normal human reaction to,
Right.
you know, be unsettled about your own expectations, right? You're your worst critic. And so if you have expectations for another person and that hurts, it's like 10 times worse with yourself, right? And so
Yeah.
so I'm just trying to come to terms with that and really look at look at where I want to be in my life and how I want to change those things if I can in the next, whatever year.
Sounds like you need a little bake sesh. Maybe you should go whip up some whipped cream. Take a
just
little
really beat
bake
into those
time,
eggs. Just
right?
really whip those eggs into shape, get those egg whites nice and peaked. Yeah.
That's a meringue.
Oh.
Wait, do you still
Morgan,
use
can
Greek
you just
yogurt?
let me have No, I just said the wrong, because I have also made meringue as well.
I know you have, yeah.
Yeah, so I just forgot. No, I put Greek yogurt in my whipped cream with the heavy whipping cream.
Well, now I'm confused. I'm like, I don't think that's what I did. So
yeah, heavy whipping cream.
No, I'm saying with the eggs. Yeah, no, I definitely didn't use eggs in the bowl. So oh my gosh,
that's
too good.
Yeah, that's my week. So anyways, not that our topic has anything to do with that at all, but you know what? That was kind of a nice break doing the research for this episode, which, by the way, is about body count, and we'll get all into the meaning of body count, but it was actually a nice break. I was telling you before, I was just like so annoyed, like I have to do research for this episode of this podcast that I started based on what I wanted to do. Like, I'm so mad at myself. Like, bitch, shut up. You decided to do this yourself, and it actually brings you a lot of joy. Mm-hmm. So it was actually really exciting to do some of this research. Honestly, more so because I think the term body count, that's a fairly new, that's like definitely like a Gen Z coined way to discuss this topic. And I'll get into that in a second. So, but before we jump in, as always, I just want to remind everyone, in case you haven't picked it up by now, we are not experts. We're not doctors. We're not even really researchers. We are just folks trying to figure it out and also really interested in ridiculous conversation that not enough people are talking about. And so, yeah, with that, I will say that the term body count, like I said, it's a new Gen Z term for how many people you have had sexual intercourse with, whether that be oral or penetration. Okay. So this is.
I didn't know. Well,
no, okay. Exactly.
I just, that's interesting. I didn't even think about like what kind of sex.
Right.
I don't know, but I did not know the term body count till a few months ago. Ryann had to tell me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So that's why it made it to the list of topics that we want to cover.
Right, exactly. Yeah. If you think I'm not very online, I mean, I know I'm like online, but TikTok, I feel like an old woman. I'm just like, what's that TikToker thing that people are doing? Like, I don't get it, but that's okay. I'm willing to accept the fact that I'm a little bit too old for the app itself, or just too old for my old soul. Maybe it's just too old for me, because I see a lot of people my age doing it. And I don't know how.
I see a lot of people of all ages on there. I think it varies. You're right.
It does vary.
Yeah,
that is true. And I have one, and so I get like the trends that are followed. Like, I get it. But I will say I don't feel as excited to like have a presence on there or like be on that app as I did, I think, honestly, because if you think about it, like our Instagram looks very similar to like MySpace, like and Facebook, like they all kind of still follow that same, like you have a profile and then you look at other people's profile, like it still follows that same type of like format, right? Instagram is kind of just the condensed, like kind of updated version. But TikTok kind of just really threw me for a loop when it was just like, wait, but there's like other things and you can put music behind and now you get to copy people's words. And I was just like, I don't know. I can barely say my own words. Like nope, not going to work for me.
Fair. So. No, that's true. It's a little daunting when you first get on there.
Right.
Maybe that ages me to say that, but I agree with you. Yeah. It's a bit much.
It is, right. So, which is why when this term came up, so body count, right, which is referred to, and this is straight from Urban Dictionary, so you know it's real.
Mm.
But it's,
solid
yeah,
source.
right, solid source, very, very, just
Accredited,
researched and accredited.
acclaimed.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. All the things.
Mm-hmm.
Right up there with Webster herself. But anyways, it's about, yeah, so the term body count comes from basically body count. Actually, obviously, if you know anything besides the Gen Z term, it was about how many people that you've killed, right? Or like it had to do with like war vets, unfortunately, because we still believe in war for whatever weird reason we do. But it had to do with like how many people that you had killed. And so it was already like this weird detached term to use to describe something like really heinous and like awful. But then it was like recoined by Gen Z to also describe something kind of like ugly and like awful, not the people that you had sex with, but just to describe this in a way that has been used to describe gruesome things, was kind of a weird like twist of like understanding of the word, right? So this came about, it was around before 2020, but in the year 2020, because TikTok blew up so much due to the pandemic and people having a lot more time to be on social media, this term body count kind of went viral, right? And it had like a huge impact on the way that we discuss, past relationships, past partners, and just past sexual experiences. And so the way that it was described, as far as, yeah, Urban Dictionary and the few sources that I saw just that had done articles on it about TikTok, it was oral or penetration. So it
Okay.
was all different types of, body count did not just mean, penetration or something like that. It was just anyone who you've had like a sexual experience with, which honestly, sure, I guess that makes sense. But like in reality, that's so many more people. Is that just me?
So you thought your number was like X, but really now you're realizing it's like Y. It's like Y, like way different.
It's like
is that what you're saying?
X to the Y power. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I'm
squared.
Like, yeah,
Squared.
there
Is that
you
what
go.
you're saying?
I'm not a math major.
Oh, yeah. Don't look elsewhere for math.
Right.
Not here.
No, exactly. But like, that's the thing, because when I thought of even the term body count, which we'll get into, how that's evolved, but I was thinking the actual body, like meaning that it had to do with a more sexual, intimate act, right? Much more than just like, I mean, not kissing, I guess. So
Right.
oral or penetration.
Okay, but even when you say penetration, like fingering,
yeah,
I wouldn't
counts,
immediately think that. What?
I said, yeah, that counts.
That counts?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
I mean, just because you didn't feel penetrated doesn't mean you weren't.
I mean,
let's be
I'm
real
just gonna
here.
have to like go back to the drawing board. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Gonna have to figure out some other numbers here.
No, exactly. This is, and we'll get into all the silliness of even thinking that there's like this, whole like number that like everybody has or knows, but whatever, we'll get into it.
Yeah.
Again, that could just be me. But so again, so I was kind of thinking about like where this term has come from, like what was the term adapted from, right? Like what did we call that before we called it body count, which is like in today's terms. So what did you call it before? We watched a movie that we really like a bunch with this kind of title. So what did you call it before, Morgan?
I was gonna reference that movie. I think you just said like, what's your number?
Right, exactly. So what's your number? And honestly, I mean, the reason that body count went so viral is because I think it's like a very easy term to kind of coin and play with, because a lot of people might not know what it means yet, which is what happened. This is actually why this TikTok trend went so viral, is because people on TikTok would literally stop people just in the, in the street or wherever they met them at school, and ask them this very invasive question, like, oh, what's your body count? And then, the whole trend was like, oh, watching people be like, oh, what's that mean? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's kind of awkward interaction, but Gen Z is kind of all about the awkward and about like the cringe. That's kind of like the whole thing. So that, kind of spiraled into like this bigger conversation about, do people actually still care about how many people that you've been sexually involved with, right? Like how relevant is that still to our society? Turns out it's still very relevant, more so now as like a funny discussion topic, whereas we've come a long way. That used to be like a marker of whether or not you were fit to be a wife, right?
Right.
And so we've come a long way as far as culturally. But I do want to mention, something going viral does not mean validity, right? It does not equate something actually being valid. And so the problem, I think, with social media and these types of things going viral is that it does give weight to them, right? So that now young people are having this conversation, sometimes maybe prematurely, sometimes maybe not, but they're having this conversation about something that actually is a very personal, a preference and a personal, experience and choice for you. And
Right.
so it doesn't need to be decided by random bloggers or whatever on the internet that are like, oh, this number is only good for these types of people, right? So we'll get into that, but I do want to mention, yeah, speaking in the binary, it feels weird, especially because a lot of the resources and like the surveys that I found were very binary. So they don't, I wasn't able to find all the pieces of just reality that we live in, right? People aren't just this or that a lot of times. And yeah, and so it kind of felt, for me, it was kind of frustrating. It was still interesting to research, but it was kind of frustrating, because it's like everybody doesn't just fall into these perfect categories, right? And so we'll kind of get into that.
Okay.
So anywho, but yeah, what's your number is how I know it from our generation. I think before that, it was just more kind of hidden and taboo to even ask questions like that or to discuss it, because it meant that you were like sexually promiscuous and like, oh, if you have a number, that must mean you get around. And it's just like, you know what? Or we're just all human beings that have genitals. Like, that's it. That's all that means. But anyways, so I want to talk about, first of all, I wanted to look up, when I was like a little bit naive in my, assumptions about body count and things like that. I wanted to look up the average body count. Like, what is the average, amount of people that, have sexual intercourse with, how many people does that usually range from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got some interesting,
yeah,
I got some interesting statistics, which I
Okay.
will ask you. So, what do you think the average in the U.S. for just people in general, not men, not women, just in general? How many partners do you think on average people have, or at least what they tell? Because, like, are they telling the truth?
Right. And like, what age are we talking about of this survey? Like, does it range or
This is
okay?
Yes,
this is just
a range.
any.
Yeah.
Okay. The average, I would say 12.
Oh, look at Morgan's.
Is that?
No, I'm just kidding. That's the thing. Whatever number you name, it feels, yeah. So the average in the US is actually 7.2 partners, which I think it's funny to think about a 0.2 partner, but
just the
7.2. Yeah. Yes. It's more like a negative one, if you know what I mean, but just kidding. Just kidding. But no. So yes, the average in the US is 7.2 partners, which honestly, that actually seems pretty accurate.
Okay.
Just because I'm thinking of like the most prudish people I know or most conservative versus like the most active. Actually, no, that's still conservative.
Okay, that's why I said 12.
No.
I'm like, Jesus, do I sound like a, I don't know. I don't want to say slut.
I know, yeah.
A more sexually active person? I don't know. I mean, you can be really sexually active just with one person, but
no, exactly.
I was going to say 15, and I was like, don't say 15. So I said 12, and I was still wrong. I was still off by 4.8 or whatever.
Or so this survey, right? Or so this survey says, right? Like, that's the thing. How honest are people really being on this?
Well, real quick. So in American Pie, one of the American Pie movies, there is, I know, such a callback, and it's probably the second one that no one saw. So he says they're in college, and he says he slept with 3 girls, and their ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend. He slept with 3 girls. She says she slept with 1 guy. And so then there's a part in the movie where he says, well, if she says 1 guy, that means 3. That's the logic. And on the reverse, her friend says, well, if he says 3 girls, he means 1.
Yeah.
So how honest are people being?
Well, that's the thing, right? Because the reality is that we still live in a very heteronormative patriarchal society that says, yeah, men can have more partners, right? And that's what's more socially acceptable. So he's quote unquote lying about his number and making it higher because he wants to seem like he's such a man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas she's like downplaying her number because she wants to seem like a lady, you know? And like that's the thing. That movie brings up a really good point, right? Because that's it's at least playing with those gender roles and kind of like begging the question, like, does this really matter? Does it even apply? They never talk about what the real number is anyway, right? So the point
Right.
is to like, who knows what people's real number is anyway? You know what I mean? So exactly. But I will say I thought this was kind of interesting. So in the UK, the average is 7, according to this was an article on healthline.com. So the average amount of partners in the UK is 7, so around the same as here. But the average in Italy is 5, which I thought was interesting. Only because I don't know, we just like maybe this is just my perspective changing about our country and how shitty it really is, but like we just seem like such a prudish like
We're so much more
country,
prudish than
right?
Italy. I mean, maybe
Right.
I'm being stereotypical of Italy, but I just feel like people would be fucking all the time.
But see, I think the thing is that when it's done like out of shame, or if it's done like in the dark in private, I think it happens more, right? Like a person
Mm,
that is taught about bodily autonomy and healthy, healthy sexual acts, or like healthy ways to be with a partner or something like that, or just has more room to like assess that and grow and observe and do things. I
just a
feel
more
like
open
you
mindedness about sexuality.
Right, exactly. I feel like you are more prone to maybe hold off, or not even just hold off, but just like pick a little bit smarter because you're not trying to learn everything from actually experiencing it, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like I didn't learn much in high school or in general about like sexual health and what that looks like, and yeah, like I said, bodily autonomy and feeling okay to say no, because everything in my society has said, oh, just come on, just give him a chance, he's nice, he's this, he's that, he deserves all these chances. But then when I have sex with too many people, or if I do it the wrong way, it's like, oh well, she's used up, she's used goods, she's past her mileage, or whatever, whatever term that they decide to put on women to make them not as sexually promiscuous, right? Or not deemed fit to be a wife, right? And so to me, I was looking at these stats and I was just like, I think that, even if that stat is correct, it just kind of shows that like I think that we get into a lot of sexual situations, especially for myself, where I've gotten to a lot of sexual situations where I really didn't know what my options truly were, right? I felt a lot of times definitely pressured into situations for sure. And I won't say that I regret necessarily all of them, but some regret does come with that because I feel like I should have been taught a little bit more on how to be a stronger person in that situation. But I've never really been taught about sexual health, so I didn't really know, if that makes sense.
Right. And I think there's a lot of validation, like self-worth validation that
Hmm.
comes with getting that attention, locking it down, even for the night. You know what I mean? Even though there's shame
Mm,
tied to it after the fact,
yeah,
I think there is some validation in knowing you got that person home,
yeah,
like you conquered that hill. And
right.
so it's a very interesting view that we have on sex. That's a good point.
No, exactly. It just really, and again, this is not saying that a higher number really means anything in general, but but if that, like I said, we're just going off of these few statistics that I found, and if that is really true, I'd be interested to, know how many of these people feel like they had, a healthy sex education, right?
Mm,
A healthy education on what it means to be with someone, instead of just finding out through the act itself, right?
yeah.
Um, but finding out in the act itself wasn't bad either. It's the best teacher.
You're the best. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, yeah. So my next thing is, somebody's probably lying also, right? When you talk about somebody's number, and whether it's yours or somebody else's, I mean, the reality is, as I was looking through these, these articles that I was finding, all I was thinking was, it's nobody's fucking business. It's no one's business, which is why I feel weird or not even necessarily weird, but I just kind of had like a hesitation to share these like this research or this, these surveys, because it was just like, it's no one's business, like who sleeps with who. Because honestly, you can honestly do whatever you want. It doesn't mean that you don't need to have any regard for like your next partner or the person that you're with. But in reality, trying to, decide for yourself whether or not you should sleep with this person because it might affect the way the next person looks at you. Like, who wants to live like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of life is that? So
What
to
kind
me,
of life?
what kind of life? You know what I mean? I don't want to live that life. I didn't, just to let you know.
Me neither.
Exactly. Right, exactly. And so, but I did, so I liked another part of the article, as far as for conversation's sake. So healthline.com asked the question after this survey was shared. It says, is it possible to be too conservative or too promiscuous, right? So is it possible to not have enough partners and seem like, oh, you're inexperienced, or you're like a prude, like we said, or like you're too good for people? Or, and is it, on the other side of the spectrum, is it possible to be too promiscuous, which obviously we all know, yes, according to our society, but how do you find yourself on that kind of spectrum, right? And so it was interesting because the survey that they took about this question is that men and women both, right? So whoever was involved in the survey that, identified as men or women, report that two partners, so only two partners is too conservative. Okay. But 30% of that same group reported that too many partners is a likely way to end a relationship. And they didn't give a number for too many, but that just goes to show you that the number is so subjective, right? Like,
they're like 4.
What is too many?
4 is too many. 2 is not yeah.
Exactly. It's so hard to know. Well, it's not that hard because apparently you're only having sex with 2 people, so nothing's hard. But it's like, you can't decide for someone else what number is too high or too low, right? Like, it can't be done.
No, it can't. But I think we have tied someone's number to some kind of quality of their character. Mm-hmm. So if someone slept with a ton of people, you're thinking, oh, they get around, they don't have a lot of regard. Maybe you're making assumptions about their self-respect, or, all these things that are built into society, like stereotypes.
Right.
Versus the other side, if they haven't slept with that many people, again, maybe they're prudish, standoffish, they think they're better than other people, or just inexperience. Like, like virginity was so valued, but now at a certain age, if you're a virgin, then you are looked at like something's wrong with you.
Right.
So there's a lot of like character evaluation, I think, that is happening with these numbers. It's not necessarily the numbers themselves.
Right.
It's what people think they might indicate for that person in particular.
That's true. I mean, fair enough, right?
And I'm not saying these are good things. I'm just saying these are stereotypical things. We're not judging here. We have our own numbers, but I'm just saying I can see maybe where people are thinking, like where people are going with these numbers.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And I will say, let's be real. I mean, we can talk about these things as two people that have lived a life and learned to kind of reject a lot of societal standards, even though it's a daily process, right? Every day I have to kind of battle between what I want to do and what society wants me to do. But at the same time, I will say that in our younger years, this is something that has come up multiple times throughout our lives, right? And so it's not like we're just above it and we're like, oh no, numbers don't matter. No, I've had conversations not only with my husband and, most recent partner, but I've had conversations that were not so great and that, definitely made me feel awkward about, sharing. And I'm just going to throw it out there now. I don't know my number. I've never kept a tally.
Oh my God, I'm so relieved. I thought we were going to go over our numbers, and I was thinking about it because I knew we were talking about this today. I was thinking about it last night, and I was like, I hope she doesn't ask because I don't know. I'm not one of those people who kept like a little black book or like a running list in my phone. I don't have that. No. So yeah, I do not know.
Although I will say you'll remember this when we used to, so me and Morgan lived together for 2 years. Yeah. But I used to visit her all the time anyway. And so we would drive home because it was like a long drive from her campus where she was going to school to home. And one of the ways we'd stay up is by going through our past hookups. Do you remember that? And we would just like go down the list and be like, okay, so like who to talk about? And we'd like talk about like, oh, who's the first guy you kissed? Like, and then it just goes downhill from there. But
I do remember that. I do. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, since then, which was what, 7-8 years ago, I do not remember. And I think honestly for me, it was always kind of a thing that like, I'm not gonna keep track because I don't care about my number, but at the same time, me kind of rejecting the societal standard, but also like kind of protecting myself in that way was like, I'm purposefully not going to remember because I don't want this to ever come up and me feel like I'm being dishonest because I don't want to you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to ever have to think in my mind, like, should I tell them the real number or should I tell them like the modest number? Or, you know, like, should I gauge how they react from this number and then tell them the real number? Like, I don't want to ever go through that. But I'll be honest, I've had some partners, like, it is what it is. Like I said, there's been regret. Okay.
Could you ballpark it? You don't have to say. No. I'm not saying say. I'm just saying for yourself. Do you have an idea?
No. Let's take a break.
That's fine.
Which leads us to our next topic. Is it anyone's business besides your own, right? And so I think because like, just like we were talking about, right? When we talk to each other about our numbers and when we talk to each other about our past experiences, honestly, whether it be sexually or if it were just a flirtatious situation or whatever, when we talk about it, it's because we are close friends. We've built that rapport that we don't judge each other for those things. And even if we do, it's all in good fun because like we've been there for everything anyway. You know what I mean?
Literally. So, yeah. We were just talking about this.
Literally been there. Yeah. Do we count the things that have happened together? Is that like half a number?
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm gonna have to do some serious math after this. Okay.
There were 8 people.
Let me make a note.
So it's like a plus 2 for everyone.
Is that where the points come in?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's point two.
Yeah. If you've had more than 5 orgies, that's just another notch on your belt. Like. But anyways, so this brings me to, like I said, is it anyone's business? Honestly, not really, but I did want to find just a little bit more about, you know, any article that was written about this topic, which there are many. However, I found one by a writer, Alaya S. King, and she had written an article that is titled, "Do Not Ask a Woman How Many Sexual Partners She's Had." And then the subtitle is, "It's None of Your Damn Business." So I was immediately intrigued, obviously. And so I clicked on it and I thought it was really interesting because she basically, you know, starts the article about one of her own experiences where she went out on a date. This article was not written that long ago, but she went out on a date. Excuse me. And, I'm sorry. No, the first date was actually a while ago. So she went out on a date, like it was like the late 90s. Okay. So she went on a date and the guy asked her about it, about her number. He said it in like a way that was kind of like hinting at that topic, but really didn't like make it known what he wanted to know. And she was kind of confused by the question. And so she kind of just goes on to tell the story that she's just like, oh, I kind of went around this question, but then he came back to it and was like, oh, well, if you're not answering the question, it must be because you have a high number. And she was just like, basically taken aback. She was like, excuse me? Like, are you asking me about how many people I've been with?
She was more first date.
on a first date.
That's ridiculous. You don't even know my favorite color. You might not even know my last name.
Right. But you want to know how many people I've been with. No, exactly. Right. And so this kind of, goes back in time at when, body count or number, whatever you want to call it, was only based on people that you had sexual intercourse with, right? And so just now in the new, like in the later years, we're talking about, just any type of sexual encounter that you've had. But anyways, point being, she makes it very clear that she was like, I cannot believe you asked me this. Like, like she even says in the article, she's like, as he's saying this, I'm just like splitting the bill in my head because I know that I am about to leave so quickly after we are done. But anyways, so fast forward, she goes on another date in the early aughts, so like around 2007, 2009. And she actually says that this conversation comes up again, that it's a first date. I think that this one was not based off of an app, but like an online dating situation. She didn't really go into too much detail, probably to spare this person. Not that they need to be spared, but probably to spare them. But basically, she just kind of goes into this, conversation, basically thinking about why is this question coming up in dating, right? Whether it be in the 90s or now in the early aughts. And even now in, in the 2020s and beyond, why is this question still coming up? And so she brings up, this question that I was thinking the same thing. She says, do cishet men, right? So cis heterosexual men wake up after a night of sex and make an internal check mark concerned about the increasing number, right? So who decides that this number is important, right? Because so far, the only people that have cared to ask her about this are first date cishet men that think that they have the right to know more about your sexual, history, because it's going to give them a gauge of where they're going to place you, right? Like,
right.
Am I not worth a second date if I'm over a certain number, right?
Right.
And she makes the point, I'd be judged whether I said 2 or 200, right? It doesn't matter what my number really is. The point is that you are deciding that my sexual experience has some sort of value to what I can bring to this, possible relationship.
Right.
Or
He's
experience.
relating it to like her character. Like we were saying, her values, her integrity.
Exactly. And so I have the same question, right? I have never heard, any cishet man that I know, or straight person that I know, as far as a male, talk about this in terms of like, oh yeah, I don't want my number to go up, so I'm not going to go out tonight. Or, oh, I wanted to go home with her, but I really want to be a husband in the future, so like I don't want my number to go up.
And it's such a double standard, because if they're trying to get their number up, they need some girl to fuck. So okay, that raises her number. Now you're making her, in your terms, less wifey material.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's bullshit.
But that's the thing, right? Because there's some women that you get to decide for them, apparently, in this scenario, right? In this fucked up system. You get to decide that this person is not, housewife worthy. This person is not bring home to mom worthy. Therefore, I'm going to subject her to my very unimpressive dick all night. And now she has to go find somebody else to, put up with, the mark that I've left on her, kind of thing, right? And so it's very much that idea of, like being like a tainted flower, right? A canvas that isn't clean anymore, right? It's just like, first of all, fuck all of those analogies, because the reality is all it is just putting more labels on us and, making it harder for us to relate to each other, right? Mm-hmm. Because if all of our numbers are something that's like coveted and, to be respected, well, then how do we relate to other women that are going through the same situation? We can't.
I just had that thought. Like, now we are putting judgment on women who have a high number or have a low number.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're internalizing it. Yeah. Exactly. And in reality, that's the thing. Like, if you want to be, I don't even like the term sexually promiscuous, but if you want to be a sexually, curious person and you want to go do what, whatever it is that your heart desires, as long as, it's consensual, mm-hmm. you should be able to do that. We should promote that, because that is how you'll feel less pressure about the whole situation and maybe not make mistakes And maybe you'll ask more questions to the people around you because you won't feel so worried about this weird number that's going to that's going to label you in this certain category, right? Because like the survey said, if you don't have enough partners, if you're not enough experienced, you're too conservative. But if you have too many, whatever that means, then you're like undateable or whatever that means, right? And so you're kind of like in this impossible situation where honestly, all this is asking you to do is lie because people are still having sex. Let's be real. Like people are still going to have sex anyway. So,
right.
So yeah, so I really liked her article. Like I said, Elia S. King, she had a really good article, and she even brought up like a song reference to like this R&B song. I won't go too much into it, but basically she says in this intro to the song, the woman is talking about how she's been she went out with her friends one too many times and her body count is increasing and she's quote unquote getting sloppy, right? And so it's just like that's internalized, right? Nobody needs to think that way about themselves. And again, you're entitled to your own opinion. The way you see yourself is just that. It's for you. But why have this unnecessary, standard that really no one can live up to if you're going to have sex anyway, right? You already did it or you're going to do it. So like, why not just be healthy about it and realize, hey, I'm a full person.
Right.
And I want to have sex. That's it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, don't build that piece of shame into the situation already. Because if you want to go have sex and then you have sex and then you have shame about it, you're just putting yourself in that situation.
Right.
Because you're holding yourself to that standard. And unfortunately, that is a cultural standard like we've been talking about, but that's something we need to get away from.
Yeah, exactly. And sexual encounters already, include so many moving parts, being into the person enough to actually want to let them, do whatever you're going to do together. But then also you need to be worried more about consent, right? Like that's the missing piece of all of these articles to me. Is just that why are we not talking about consent more, right? And we know that this is a problem within our larger society. We see it happen all the time, unfortunately. But the reality is that while you're going through a sexual act with a person or whatever, or people, hopefully you're not just thinking about your number rising. Hopefully you're thinking about, should my number be rising because am I actually comfortable in this situation? And, of course, I'm talking mostly to women, but sexual, violence happens across the board to people of all genders and, outside of gender. It doesn't really matter. And so that's, for me, that's where my mind was going. I was like, we just need to be talking about consent more.
That's a fair point. Absolutely 100%. And also, if you're having that worry, you're taking away from that sexual experience. If it is consensual and you want to enjoy it,
right? I
hope you're not worried about the number going up.
Right.
Go have a good time.
Point. Yeah, exactly. Right. Sex is awesome.
Yeah,
it can
be.
Fan.
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm a fan. Yeah.
10 out of 10 would recommend. I'd also recommend a vibrator
5-star
to follow
review.
up.
Yeah.
I'd recommend a vibrator. Just have it on hand. Literally, there's ones that fit on your hand. You might be disappointed, is all I'm saying.
If you want to keep your body count low, there's a side recommendation.
There you go. That's a whole nother episode. But anywho, but yeah, just kind of wrapping up a little bit with just that thought. It's so silly to share your number, okay? Because only judgment can come from that. If it's too small, you seem like a prude. If it's too large, you're a hoe. And if it's just right, you're probably lying. You're probably just like lying about it.
Right. Nobody you go on a date, number. You're on a first date, and he's like, what's your number? And you're like, 7.2. Like, and he's like, will you marry me?
Yeah. He's like, you've had an orgy too? Marry me. But no, exactly. That's exactly it. There are so many other things that we regret, and put like dumb value on, like, let yourself have an orgasm. If you even get that far, let yourself have those situations. Life is hard enough.
Yes, you deserve an orgasm.
Yeah. Life is hard. Let the dick be hard too. You know what I mean? Just let it happen. But anyways, last thing I did want to cover and just mention, this was kind of interesting. This was a thought just from my own brain, because I was thinking, and this is me being naive, but I was thinking maybe a possible stigma of body count comes from, the amount of STIs or STDs that have been transmitted, right? And maybe people are just nervous about that, which I do think comes into play.
Right. Yeah,
But
you
that
should be
question
safe.
of, have you been tested recently versus what's your number are two very different conversations.
Yeah.
One could actually be a very fruitful, interesting, open conversation. One is you just looking to judge another person and decide, where you're going to put that person, what box you're going to stick them in, right? And so I do think that that's a really important question. That was something that within online dating I found to be a lot more common. Not always, not by any means always, but I did find that to be a lot more of a safe place to kind of ask, like, if before you're going to meet up with somebody, or if you did know you were going to get, sexually involved with them. I found online dating to be a little bit more open about that. Hey, have you been tested recently? I know it's awkward, but like, I'd rather talk about it than not. And I will say at first I was kind of like, whoa, that's like a big question. But at the same time, it's like, wait, no, like that's a completely appropriate question. You know what I mean? That's so appropriate. That goes right in line with consent, right? And so I think that's beautiful. I think that's a wonderful way to, wrap up this weird conversation. Not that I didn't enjoy the conversation, but to wrap up the weird kind of stigmas about it, why not, have a stigma about not asking if you've been tested, right? Like that should be where the stigma is. Like you should be more worried about, have you been sexually healthy, right? Have you done those things? Because it doesn't mean that you're not ever going to contract something. That is a-okay. It will happen. People contract things all the time. Most of them are treatable. And even if they're not, it's okay. You're not the only person to experience it. But there shouldn't be shame around it, because if you feel shame for even going to get tested, how much more shame would you feel if you had to tell your partner that you did contract something and that you did pass it on, right? Yep. And so again, be open about it. Talk about these things. If you don't know your status, if you don't know, you should get tested. That is something that you should, know about within your immediate area. Where can I go? Is there a Planned Parenthood? And I think like those types of questions, even myself, I'm guilty of, using that information. If I found out, not that I've really experienced it that much, but if I found out that somebody had, like an STI or something else, that is a conversation that has a lot of stigma towards it. Oh, wow. Well, that person, wasn't safe. I can be the first to admit I was not always safe. There were nights where I could have been a lot safer,
Right. We talked about this in the contraception episode.
Right.
Like we've all had like an oopsie evening. It's just a part of being a young adult.
Right.
Or a regular adult or an older adult. Everyone's,
Right.
Who knows?
Exactly. We don't even know if we're adults yet, but exactly. That's the part that kind of stuck with me. I was like, you know what? That stigma of, somebody, I remember like in high school, that's kind of like my earliest memories of it. But, someone in high school would like contract something, or it would like be around, oh, she's got, the clap or whatever name that they came up with for it, which I still don't even really know what all those names mean. But whatever it means, that's just another label to demean somebody. That person is still a person. They just didn't have the proper sexual education to know how to protect themselves. And even if they did, guess what? You're still taking a risk by being with people. It doesn't matter. Yep. So we need to move toward that type of lifestyle, right? Being healthy with our communication and being healthy with, where did you get tested? Because I would like to get tested too. I don't know where to go, So I did want to just mention that, because to me, that seems very relevant. And instead of just thinking about this, this number that somebody's trying to reach or trying to stay up under, not only is life too short, but like sex is just like not always that great. And if you have an opportunity to have sex with somebody that you're really into and you have a great connection with, I really hope that you won't stop yourself because you don't want to go over a 7.2 number. You know what I mean? Just
Amen.
Go for it. So that's my spiel. Anything else you want to add to that, Morgan?
No, that was great. That's a really good point. And yeah, the conversation should be more focused on sexual health, sexual education, way more so than what your number is.
Right.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. And no, we will not be sharing our numbers, mainly because we don't remember. But that's for another
100%
time.
right.
Yeah. But anyways, but yeah, before we end the episode, as always, I just want to thank our lovely interpreters. This has been such a wild ride, not just tonight, just in general. It's been such a wild ride, but it's been so fun. So thank you so much. Shout out to ProBonoASL for always providing language access. Feel free to follow us on YouTube for the visual conversation to see more of these lovely people doing what they do so well. And also feel free to subscribe on any of the platforms where you get your podcasts. Please leave us a 5-star review. I don't know if you noticed, Morgan, but we do have a few 5-star reviews I was very excited about. It's probably like both of our moms or something, but
right.
But no, it's exciting. I haven't read them yet, but
exciting.
I did see.
Yeah, please, leave us a review. Give us 5 stars. Put something in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, you can follow us on Instagram at Wrong the Podcast for more fun stuff, quizzes, polls. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. Yeah. And now I'm going to go get a black book and write down all my numbers. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm going to go do some math. Give me like 3 days because I'm really bad at it.
I told you I'm at like a life crisis right now. Maybe I'll be a mathematician. I don't know. Maybe I just never tapped into it.
Okay. Well, I'll send you the numbers and you can crunch them because I don't have that kind of time.
All right. Well, have a wonderful night, everyone, or evening or day, or I always say things wrong. And we will see you in the next episode.